Now, if you want to season like the best chefs in the world too, then you need to know that it is really easy if you know these 10 secrets. First, salt. Now, salt is more important than most cooks realize. Everything tastes boring without salt, and everything tastes better with salt. I mean, chefs have a reputation of not being afraid using salt and fat, of course, and that's why everything tastes so much better in restaurants. Now, when you use salt in slow cooks, season a little at the beginning, a little halfway through, and a little at the end, so that the salt can penetrate the meat and give the meat a balanced salty flavor, without then at the end coming across too boring because you haven't salted it. You always need to know that you need to hold back with the salting and finish the salting process at the end, because if you add too much salt, you cannot take it away, especially if it's a stew where the liquids reduce and boil, and through that the flavor intensify, and so will your salt. Raw meats, like for barbecuing or pan frying, you need to salt the meat 3 hours before cooking, because the salt first will draw out the juices, and then after 2 hours or so will start to reabsorb them, and then it takes the salt with it, and so that it makes the meat taste so much better. Anything under 2 hours makes your meat or your raw meat bleed, where you lose flavors and you lose juices. That can make your steak surface on top of it really rubbery and dry. If you salt last minute, salt after cooking. Otherwise the salt crystals sit between the meat and the pan and lift the meat off the pan, making it impossible to brown your meats properly. The result will be gray spots on the surface of your meat, and less browning, of course, means less flavor. So some special salting tips are: season with little salted umami bombs like fish sauce, soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce, miso paste, and some chefs I know this way by adding salt in form of stock cubes. But if you add too much, everything starts to taste a bit cheap and tacky. I mean, stock cubes, you know, they contain MSG, so sure, it will always improve your flavor on some levels. The tip here, of course, is that less is more, so that you can't detect it. Now, long cooking times will also make those tacky cube flavors go away a little bit or integrate into the food. So if you want to use the stock cube method, add them at the beginning of a long cooking process. And in case you do have oversalted your food a little, counterbalance it with a few other flavors, which brings me to the next seasoning secret. But before that, I need to tell you that running my cooking school and managing some of the best restaurants in the world made me realize that most chefs and cooks have actually never learned how to season properly. I mean, it's usually salt and pepper, and after that is a bit guesswork, isn't it? And I guess that's why most recipes never really go into that topic and nobody really explain it. And most chefs and cooks only rely on it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But don't get me wrong, it took me a while to work it out. And once I worked it out, I tell you that everything starts to taste amazing. So let's see what you think of it by the end of this video, okay? Acid balances salt and makes foods taste less salty. I don't know if you knew that, but acid actually takes away some salty flavors. And if you add acid to your food, I always say it's like the flavor sun rises, you know. Things are a bit tired, acid is your doctor. You add acid to your food and the flavor party starts going. I mean, something tastes good, but a bit boring. Something tastes okay, but a bit flat. Acid will be your flavor fairy. Also, acid cuts through fats really well. It balances and cuts through sugar, and it makes bitter actually palatable. By doing so, makes foods lighter, fresher, and more interesting. The best acids for seasoning are the ones that also contain a little sugar, like balsamic vinegar, sherry vinegar, lemon juice, lime juice. Or you can be a bit creative and you can add some cream apple juice to your chicken or your seafood, mango to prawns, Pineapple on pizza, I mean, you can't beat that. Now, if you really want to get your taste buds singing, add different types of acid to your dish. Man, think like lemon juice, white wine, tomatoes, and a pasta sauce. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And in case you have added too much acid, you can correct that too by adding some gelatin. Now, that will generally improve your food anyway too, but gelatin slows down the sour flavor release. Xanthan gum does the same, and that's better for cold foods like salad dressing because it will also thicken your foods. In case the acid is still too high, well, then that brings us to the next seasoning trick. Fats. I mean, lower your acid by adding fat like oil, butter, or cream to your foods. I mean, chefs love fat, and the reason for that is fat is like the opera singer to an orchestra. I always say everything tastes better when you add fat. It's like the flavor lady starts to sing. I mean, fat is also the workhorse in food, and it carries all the other flavors. It brings them together and it makes them bigger. Fat enhances flavor, and through that, these flavors can express themselves. And that's why chefs always say fat is flavor. I mean, fat is also a texture, and it generally sort of stays more in the background of the other flavors. It brings volume, it brings mouthful, and it sends some real comforting signals to your brain. So basically, when it comes to flavor, fat is your best friend. I mean, just ask the French. Sauces, cheese, foie gras, wagyu beef, salami, nut butter, pestos, everything is rich in fat. Now, some really greasy secrets which you generally throw out, but you should use in your next cooking is bacon grease. I mean, yum! Fats from roasted fatty pan juices or big roasts, or cooking your steak or your chops or your chicken breast. I mean, honestly, nothing is better than a bit of bacon grease on a slice of toasted bread after a big night out. Some freshly ground pepper on the top, dash of balsamic glaze. Oh, trust me, try it. I know what I'm talking about. So most fried foods taste so good because they're cooked in fat. Because without fat and heat cooking, there would be no Maillard reaction in many foods. Which brings me to the next seasoning secret. Maillard reaction. Oh, that sounds so fancy. All it really is, it's browning meats, caramelizing onion, deep frying foods, crusty, crunchy breads. All taste so good because they underwent Maillard reaction in some form or way. I mean, browning of food properly through heat will hugely improve the food's flavors. I mean, think boiled potatoes versus roast potatoes. Think boiled chicken versus roasted chicken. Think raw onions versus caramelized onions, okay? Browning breads, browning nuts, spices, makes them all develop sort of new flavors that sort of didn't exist before. Browning of foods generally develops complex flavors profiles which are sort of layered with depth and intensity. Now, when you deglaze a pan or so, that falls into the same category, and you can learn loads more about that in my video on beef burgundy or coq au vin. I put them both in the link below. But Maillard reaction often requires carbohydrates to develop the amazing flavor, and one of them can be sugar. Now, I know you're going to say sugar as a seasoning tool. Well, hear me out, okay? Sugar as a seasoning tool is a bit tricky, because you don't want to have too much in your savory foods, and generally there is plenty of natural sugar in foods like fruits and vegetables anyway. So in most cases you don't have to add it. But know this and pay attention, okay? You ready? Your tongue is covered with flavor receptors. Some react to sweet, some react to sour only, some react to umami only, some to bitter only, and some to salt. So in case salt hits a sour flavor receptor on your tongue, the receptor will not react. It stays dormant. It will not send any messages of excitement to your brain. So when you season your food, make sure you cover all the basic so that all your flavor receptors get activated, and that makes your food taste complete, okay? A tiny bit of sugar is needed so simply to activate all flavors, just like you add a pinch of salt to your cakes or to your sweets, you know? Now when you feel the dish is lacking a bit of roundness or a little bit of love, you know, a little sugar will add this warming feeling, because sugar is one of the few flavors we are able to taste the moment we are born, and hence it gives us such a comforting feeling. And then you grow up and then you start feeling the pain. And a little pain can be actually quite pleasant, at least when it comes to tasting foods. Heat, because too much heat can actually cause us pain. But if done in the right amounts, heat is actually a miracle in seasoning. But have you ever wondered why we don't consider hot as a flavor, but we still taste it? Well, it's because hot, spicy foods stimulate our temperature receptors on our tongue. Now, those receptors are actually also pain receptors, and they prevent us from eating too hot foods or too cold foods. And that's why we start to sweat when we eat extremely hot foods, because our brain tells our body that we need to chill down. So hot foods are more like a stimulant. Now this stimulant will put your whole body on alert and sensitize it and tickle your taste buds and alert them, which makes you much more receptive to all the other flavors which are coming, okay? But our tongue does not only have temperature receptors, it also has receptors to detect poisonous food. And the way we receive them mostly is by tasting bitter. Now, bitter is a serious flavor. Bitter in small amounts in your food, boy, I mean, it literally causes flavor miracles. Bitter can be mind-blowing in terms of adding really complex flavors to your food. I mean, bitter also brings harmony to your food. Now, think a little bit about the bass player in a rock band. That's what bitter is in your food. And generally, you don't need to add bitter, as it's easily acquired through adding herbs, spices, salads, nuts, olives, olive oil, certain vegetables and fruits. I mean, you can also think about red wine, mustard, cheese, fermented foods, coffee, black tea, and where I generally find to struggle a little bit with natural bitter are slow cooks and stews. I mean, think about bolognese. So the trick here is to add a little bit of bitter chocolate or natural cocoa powder, and it will not only enrich all the other flavors, it adds some great color too. Now, did you like that? People always ask me, what is my favorite bitter seasoning tool? Well, I'm glad you asked, really I am, because yes. That's the answer to your question, right? Okay, next seasoning trick on the list is umami. And believe me, I'm no fan of adding man-made MSG to food, because there are much better options like natural umami-rich foods. Think of adding dried mushroom powders, a few drops of soy sauce, a bit of fish sauce, Worcestershire sauce, a bit of paprika powder, miso paste, tomatoes, parmesan, garlic, and so on. Umami is sort of still not fully understood, just like kokumi, but basically you add umami-rich foods to your food and all flavors will step into the foreground. It's like you shine a bright light on them and suddenly you see all the finer details in your food. I mean, you taste things that are going on that you haven't tasted before. And in terms of flavor, umami turns the lights on. Okay, our next flavor, and yes, you're gonna be surprised. I mean, you must have heard the saying that even the best chefs only cook with water. because water makes your food taste better simply because water is a solvent, and most of the things I've described in this video are dependent on water for their full flavor release. I mean, water is not so much as a seasoning tool as it is actually a savior of flavors, okay? Now, with the help of water, you can bring back the flavors in a split or broken sauce. You know, a greasy bolognese, a greasy slow cook, a greasy pasta dish, a little bit of water, and you bring back the spark and the flavors the dish has lost because you re-emulsify it. And by re-emulsifying, you bring foods back to life. You reinstate textures. So I hope that makes sense. Now, a few honorable mentions before I show you the best trick to truly become a seasoned cook. So, first of all, only use good ingredients. I mean, everyone knows that. Try to plate your food really nicely because we eat with our eyes, and if possible, sprinkle something green on top, as it makes everything look fresher. It makes everything look better. Tip 10, the secret of all seasoning tricks. I think by now you should have the knowledge to be a really good seasoned cook. However, if you feel it's still not enough, there's one last trick which I want to show you, and that is basically that you can always go and become a seasoned chef like that. Anyway, if that doesn't work either, you can do what my wife did and just marry a really good cook. Thanks so much for watching.